Welcome viewers, Dr. Jason W. Morrison, Theologist, New South Wales, Australia. We are doing Watchtower Study Edition, November 2019. It's New Year's Eve. We're up to the heart-to-heart communication. A very strange article this, and I'll show you the reasons why. Paragraph 8. We might find it difficult to open up to others because someone might have hurt us in the past. And that's a very, very good reason not to open up to others. If someone's hurt you in the past, then that's a very, very good reason to be very careful about who you're going to share your important parts of yourself with. You've got to protect your privacy. Now, this is trying to undermine to a certain extent your ability to be very careful about who you speak to. And what this is actually doing is it's provoking backbiting and gossip and all this other stuff, because if people know too much, this is where all the slander and other things come from. Or we may feel that we lack the time and energy to cultivate close relationships. Well, the fact of the matter is that could be the truth. You can't be everything to everyone. However, we should not give up. Give up what? Just have a normal, structured life. If we want our brothers to stand by us when trials come, now this is conditional. This is a conditional statement. If we want our brothers to stand by us when trials come, we must learn to trust them now with our thoughts and feelings. I don't agree with that statement. I'm sorry. No. Trusting people with your thoughts and feelings is a very exclusive privilege for someone to have. You've got to be very careful, as it said here, who you share your thoughts and feelings with, because you'll be betrayed, you'll be undermined. It gives people, as a matter of fact, if you're not careful, it empowers people to undermine you. And that is an important step toward becoming true friends. No, it's not necessarily. If you're on a soccer team with someone, you don't get there spewing out all your thoughts and feelings about everything. The proverb says a couple of times that even a fool's counted wise if he holds his tongue. What's this say? Now, that you have purified yourselves by your obedience to the truth, that's the finished work of the Lord Jesus Christ, knowing that all your issues between yourself and God have been resolved for time and eternity, never to be worried about again, with unhypocritical brotherly affection. You've got to be careful what this sort of affection is suggesting and how it's interpreted. Unhypocritical brotherly respect might be a better word. As a result, love one another intensely from the heart. You've got to get this in its right perspective. There's 4 types of love. There's love toward God. There's your family love. There's friends love. And then there's another love. I forget what it is. Storge, Philios, Agape. And there was another one. I can't think of it offhand, but you've got love for God, love for people, family love, and then I think it's parental love, or one of those. But you've got to keep it in its right perspective. You can't just spew your thoughts and feelings out to everyone, because you're going to exhaust yourself and come undone. Jesus showed that he trusted his friends by communicating openly with them. No, Jesus, remember, he would choose James, Peter, and John to privately come with him at certain instances, didn't he? And might I just say, I no longer call you slaves, Jehovah Witnesses, Jesus said, because the slave does not know what his master does. But I have called you friends. Did you know you're the friend of God through the Lord Jesus Christ? Because I've made known to you all the things that I've heard from my Father who is Jehovah. Did you know you're God's friend? You don't owe him anything. You're his friend. If we can imitate him by sharing our joys, concerns and disappointments with others. Listen carefully as someone talks to you, and you may learn that you have many thoughts, feelings, and goals in common. Consider the example of Cindy, a sister in her 20s. She befriended a pioneer in her 60s named Mary Louise. Cindy and Mary Louise work together in field service every Thursday morning, and they talk freely with each other about a variety of subjects. I'm sure they do, and a lot of it would be whinging and backbiting prettied up. Cindy says, I enjoy having deep conversations with friends because this helps me to know and understand them better, and probably yourself. Friendships thrive in warm atmosphere of open communication. That's true, as long as it's constructive. Like Cindy, if you take the initiative to have warm and open conversations with others, your friendships with them are likely to grow. And Proverbs 27:9 says, oil and incense make the heart rejoice, so do sweet friendships springing from sincere counsel. And notice the sincere counsel. You can't just throw out and spew out your thoughts and feelings to everyone, because you will at some stage get hurt. You will get hurt, as you did in the past. So there's a certain amount of wisdom connected to this. We'll watch some videos now.
Well, good morning. It's still good morning. It's 11:30 on I think today's a Wednesday. I haven't done a video for a couple of weeks. I just thought I'd do the one that I said I was going to do last time, which was about Jehovah's Witnesses and suicide. Okay. As far as I'm aware, and when I was brought up, if a Jehovah's Witness committed suicide, it was viewed that a sin against God, and there's absolutely no chance of this guy getting a resurrection when the new system arrives, which of course is just around the corner. So anyway, that was the thought. Commit suicide, you've got no chance. So in other words, if you committed suicide, that was it's completely end of your life. It was total destruction, no chance of passing go and collecting 200 straight to jail, and we'll never see you again. And there's no get out of free jail card, because unfortunately you're dead. And that was the thought, and I don't know whether that's changed or not, but that's all I led to believe. Now the interesting thing is with Jehovah's Witnesses is that they have the hope of all the people in the world who are searching. A lot of them are genuinely searching for a hope, for a faith, for some answer to the woes of the world, which are then presented by Jehovah's Witnesses as the truth. It's really unusual. It's a bit baffling why many Jehovah's Witnesses commit suicide. Because of all the people in this world, you think they're the people less likely to commit suicide because of this hope, because of the hope of the resurrection, the hope of the paradise and stroking a lion without getting your hand shot, bitten off. And it's a bit odd, especially as it is just round the corner. So anyway, it's really odd. And I know of personally several cases of people that I knew that when I grew up when I was in Glasgow congregations, because if you're in Glasgow, if you're in a congregation in Glasgow, you get to know all the other congregations quite nearby, and then you get to it expands more. If you're in a congregation which is maybe a bit rural or a bit further down the coast, you're quite insular. But being in Glasgow, if you're in a congregation in a town or a city, you get to know a bit more. So as a result, you get to hear a bit more about what happens in other congregations. And there were several people, even elders' children, and even one just happened quite recently, have committed suicide. And you think, why are they doing that? Why are people committing suicide if you're a Jehovah's Witness? Now, there's many reasons for this. I can think of a few personally. I can think about maybe the disappointments that it's the thing that's just around the corner never really happened, so that they eventually come to maybe realization that it isn't just around the corner, and so as a result they've lost the will to live, to carry on. and have exited from the earth, thinking that maybe Jehovah God, the loving God that they all worship, would, in its infinite wisdom, when Armageddon does eventually come, that he does seem fit to bring this person back to life in the paradise. So in other words, it is a quick exit. You slowly kill yourself or quickly kill yourself, close your last breath, close your eyes, and instantly the next memory you have is waking up in this wonderful new system. But of course the witnesses say, sorry, that doesn't happen. Maybe they say, maybe Jehovah will forgive them, but they think it's a quick way of getting out of this into the next thing. So maybe that's what they do. I don't really know. Who knows why people kill themselves? It's a difficult one. Now I want to bring back a case of somebody I knew who was a Jehovah's Witness who killed themselves, and it's a really sad case. It's so heartbreaking, this case, that I want to say it because I think this person within the congregation she was in has probably already been forgotten about, and if you weren't around in Glasgow in like the late 80s, early 90s, you wouldn't even know who this person is. Yet their story, this person's story of what happened to them, is a direct result of the shunning that happens to Jehovah's Witness who get disfellowship. This is directly comes to that. Now, firstly, we have to accept that within the Jehovah's Witnesses, in your typical congregation, there are a lot of people who have mental illnesses, mental problems, and some of them are very serious. Now, I always used to say that if you took 100 people in the world out there, and you just got different ages and whatever it is and occupations, and you got 100, and then you went through them all right, can you just be brutally honest with us here? Are you getting any medication from the doctor for a mental illness or for depression or whatever it is? And you'd come back with some results. I'm absolutely sure, and I don't know if there's any way to prove this, but I'm sure if you took an average congregation of 100 Jehovah's Witnesses and then said to them the same thing, be brutally honest, out of everybody here who's known to be suffering from a mental illness or a depression or on medication, I'm absolutely positive that the Jehovah's Witnesses would be more than the normal people out there, which you think is really odd, because this is, one group's got the hope, one group's hopeless, yet these are the people who are depressed. It's a hard one to resolve, that one. So anyway, going back to when I was in Rutherglen congregation, there was quite spectacularly a lot of people who were suffering from mental illness. There were loads of them. There were so many, it was unbelievable. And I don't want to name names here because that's completely unfair. But if you knew Rutherglen, you'd know who they were, and some of them were quite a few of them were elders' wives as well. And it was really, really odd. And you had to make allowances for them because of the way they were. Now, what happened was I've only met a few people who allegedly were of the anointed class. In other words, the ones that we all know of, the part of the 144,000 that they immediately they die straight away. They straight away do pass go. They do collect the £200 and they go straight up to heaven, eyes closed, into open heaven, a part of the ruling class or whatever they're supposed up there. God knows, and I don't really care. So I knew a few people, and two of them were in Rutherglen, and it was really amazing that I'd seen it happen in Ayr. When I was in Ellesmere Port and in Wallasey congregation, when we did the memorial, it was a bit silly. It was a little bit silly, to be honest with you, because of course we all used to pass the bread and the wine, and it started off from the bottom, and you'd follow it along. And there you go, and now it's over to here. He'll be with me soon, and it's coming along. Oh, I'm nervous. Please don't spill the wine. Oh my God, it's coming along. And of course, you've got to pass it to the kids. Whatever you do, don't spill the wine. Don't spill the wine. You can just imagine the parents. Oh my God. And of course, the tension was racking up as you saw it coming along your row, and you go, oh, please don't spill the wine, for Christ's sake. For Christ's sake, don't spill the wine, and definitely don't drink the wine. And of course, there was the bread. Don't knock the bread off the plate. Make it a clean transfer transfer to the next person to you. Receive it cleanly and pass on cleanly. And then all went through, and that was the end of the night. Whoa, what an anticlimax. At least nobody drank the wine or spilled the wine or chomped on the bread or sent the bread flying over. You know, it was a quality controlled environment. You know, it was textbook arrangement. You know, sort of, an army couldn't have done it as better with all the attendance going up. It was fantastic. Anyway, so that's what we used to do year after year after year. You know, so eventually I moved to Air Congregation, and oh my God, there were two people who actually partook the elms, and he's drinking the wine. He's munching the bread. I'd never seen this before. I'd never seen this before, and to me it was a revelation. It was like all of a sudden I was like in the I was, oh my God, it was just amazing. It was like being, you know, as though all of a sudden I just felt sort of empowered or more spiritual, because I'd actually seen an individual who's going to go to heaven for 144,000. He's not going to go to the earth. He ain't stroking a lion. You know, if Armageddon is just round the corner. And yeah, he's going up to heaven, and he is drinking the wine and eating the bread. And another little woman as well. Don't see her often. I think she only actually comes to the memorial, but I've just seen her do the same. And I was, oh God, it was amazing, absolutely amazing. So that was in Ayr. I moved to Rutherglen, and the next memorial I came to, guess what? There were also two others doing the same. Two others. One of them was the father-in-law of Jim Wood, and another one was a guy called Harry Sutherland. Now, both of these guys were a little bit odd, to be honest with you. And Jim Wood's father-in-law, I can't even remember his name now. He used to actually say to us, because we were pioneering, "Oh, you shouldn't be pioneering. You should be out getting a job." How does that all work? You shouldn't be pioneering. You should be getting your job. You should be getting a career. You should be getting a trade. You shouldn't be doing this pioneering. I'm thinking to myself, actually, he was probably the only one who talked any sense back then. He was absolutely right. We shouldn't have been pioneering, because it affected us. All of us who did that at the time went straight to pioneering, and it really did affect us, because then, of course, we didn't have a trade. We had no skill set, and a lot of us were just deemed to be doing crap jobs for the rest of our lives. So he knew what he was talking about. So he came out was a bit mental, but actually he probably was talking complete sense. Now, the other guy was a guy called Harry Sutherland. Harry Sutherland had a wife, sorry, he wasn't married, what am I on about? He had a sister called Jane Sutherland, and they were sort of the same sort of age, but for some reason Jane decided she wasn't of the anointed, never partook of the bread, and Harry used to do this. Now, Harry Sutherland was, I can't say he was suffering from depression, because he never gave that over, but he was, let's be honest with you, suffering from some form of mental illness, which maybe anybody who thinks that they're above, that they are going to heaven and they've all of a sudden come out, maybe they are. Maybe anybody who over the past, 40 or 50 years has decided that they are the anointed, maybe probably they're suffering from some form of mental illness. So anyway, Harry clearly was. The reason why Harry was is because he was, I don't think it was in the time of Russell, but definitely Rutherford, Judge Rutherford, around about that time. And Harry never ever adopted the New World Translation of the Bible. He never used it. He thought it was a bit apostate. He only ever used to use the King James Version. He only trusted the King James Version. And because the society dynamically changed its teachings from the ones that first Russell and then Rutherford did, he couldn't get his head around this. So he still stuck to the teachings of Rutherford and Russell. And so he wouldn't adapt. He couldn't go, he'd like sort of, as you know, some people do have the mental illness, they can't move on. And he was stuck in sort of a time warp. And he was in my group. And whenever his hand went up, it was like, oh my God, what's Harry going to come out with this time? Because it was usually complete nonsense. And a breath of relief from the elder taking the group when Harry came out with something sensible. Often he didn't. Often he'd come out with something completely controversial. And we're talking I think we're doing the family book at the time. And he says, yes. And this guy, of course, never been married, he's never had sex. He's going, yes, a woman has a vulva. And then he used to go on about a woman's bits and pieces and what they're there for and all this thing. And next thing he's just like, oh my God. I remember his sister Jane used to sit next to him and go this. She used to tut because she couldn't believe the things that Harry was coming out with. So anyway, moving on. So anyway, Harry was a lot, but my God, was this guy he was fervent for the truth, and I still remember him on Rutherglen Main Street standing there holding onto the railings because he suffered from dodgy legs. I still remember him standing there like this with a Watchtower away. Still can see him doing that. Nobody bought them off him right now because he was just standing there doing that, and if anybody's spoken to him, they'd realise this guy's not quite right. But still he did that. And I remember another time he's down at the front of the hall and two elders are having to talk to him. And it was just after I think it was just after a meeting or just after we'd had our group. I think it's probably had a group because the hall was quite empty. So we're still milling at because my group was in the Kingdom Hall. So we're in the back of the school, milling about, talking. And Harry's down at the front with two elders. And one of the elders, I think, was Eric Bland. And I can't remember who the other was. It might have been Stan Bailey, because I'm sure we had tandem. I think we had two elders in our group. I'm pretty sure that's what happened. And I do remember they were trying to counsel him because he kept on coming out with these things which clearly were complete conflict what the society was teaching at the time. And I remember they lifted him up because he started getting quite aggressive, and they were one took him one side and one took him up side, and they had to lead them out. He was shouting out, "Attacked by the demons! Attacked by the demons!" So here's a guy who, because two elders were leading him out, trying to get him out of obviously the things he was shouting in front of everybody here, trying to get him out into the hallway because we're at the back and could hear everything, and he likened the elders doing this as getting attacked by the demons. So anyway, I think you've got a brief idea of what Harry was all about. The truth is everything to him. Thought it was 144,000, but was completely mental. He was lost it big style. Was coming out with apostate things, and was even calling the elders demons. But there you go. That was Harry for you. But the elders never did anything about it because they understood that Harry had a mental illness. So what are they going to do about it? Just don't take his hand. There's Harry's hand. Yeah, we'll move on. I remember him in the Kingdom Hall. His hand used to be like this, and he had this walking stick. His walking stick's like this, and the elders still not taking his hand. Just looking straight through him, and he used to moan. And he used to turn round to people around him, saying, "Look, they're not taking my hand." He was really, really annoyed about it. But of course, who would take his hand? Because in the full Kingdom Hall, he could come up with something completely ridiculous and not what was the currently train of thought. So that's Harry. Harry subsequently got very ill, and then what happened was, because they didn't want him. He should have that at this point, because he couldn't bath himself or shower himself, and Jane was elderly, his sister, who he lived with and couldn't look after him. He should have been having care from care in the community or whatever there was. There should have been something set up to help Harry out. But they were feared of what Harry would say to either a female or a male person to come round and do that they were really feared of what he was going to do. And so, to keep Harry out of contact with people who might be completely stumbled by what this guy's about to say and do, they decided within the hall to have a rota to wash and shower Harry Sutherland. And I was on that rota, and I had no training, no nothing, and I can remember me and Keith Saunders having to turn up, and me and Paul Gentini another time, and me and somebody else having to try with all of my, because he was a small guy, but he was, I won't say he was fat, but he was really strong, and he was quite big built. I think he did the weights in his time. He was, a strong guy. And I remember we're trying to lift him up to try and put him on the chair. No training at all. Flipping, doing in our backs, he's doing in his back. And then we're trying to clean him, and he was quite specific when we're cleaning him. Don't forget my scrotum. Don't forget my scrotum. Yes, lift up my scrotum. And don't forget my anus. And he always wanted the loofah. On his anus. Don't forget the anus. Oh, and I'm thinking, why am I doing this? Why am I cleaning this? Oh man, oh my God. Oh, he's of the anointed. So there you go. So that justified why we're doing this. So eventually Harry died, and that was the end of Harry's anus and cleaning it. Thank God for that. So eventually Jane got ill, and then she went to a nursing home run by Witness-ism in Blackpool, and that was it. And she started to lose her mind as well. But both of them really zealous for the truth. The truth was everything to them, absolutely everything to them. And probably the reason why they never got married, just because of the old thing that Rutherford did was, go out, be witnesses, system's ending, don't waste your time getting married. And they didn't. And subsequently, they never had any children, blah, 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 grandchildren, nothing. So that's why the congregation had to look after them, because he didn't have any relatives. So anyway, let's go back to another story. In a nearby congregation, I'm pretty sure it was Cathcart, but don't quote me on it, there was a sister in there called Susan Berryman. Now, Susan Berryman was an elderly sister. Well, I don't know how old she was. She might have been in the 60s, I don't know. And I don't know whether she's special pioneer, but certainly she pioneered, and she pioneered for years. And I used to see her, and all the time when we went to like pioneer meetings, which were held between the congregations, and I had a district overseer, a circuit overseer visit, or different things to do with pioneers. She was always there. And within Rutherglen on a Sunday night, I think, and other times we used to have like field service nights, which the pioneers organised. Christ, we used to go on the work on a Sunday night. What were we thinking of? Oh my God. So anyway, we did this on a Sunday night. We used to do this. And Susan Berryman used to come along, and also the pioneers in Cathcart or wherever it is did it, and we used to go to those as well, because it was just a further extension of a bus ride. Always used to see Susan Berryman on the work. Always saw her on the work. She was, the truth was her. The truth was in her heart. It was all what she was about. Used to see her always round at the front. I can still remember when I was at the Hamilton Assembly Hall and on the balcony looking down. Susan Berryman always at the front. Always at the front. Susan Berryman. The truth was everything to Susan Berryman. Then the next thing is, she starts coming to our meetings. And I thought, that's a bit odd, and nobody's talking to her. So, apart from Jim Wood, who was the presiding overseer at the time, and I said, how come Susan Berryman's come to our meeting? She's been disfellowshipped. She's Susan Berryman being disfellowshipped. I'm thinking, what's she being disfellowshipped? It won't be for sex. It won't be for smoking, and it won't be for drinking. What's she been disfellowshipped for? Well, apparently that the elders are saying she's coming out with some apostate things. So in other words, Susan Berryman had turned into Harry Sutherland. Susan Berryman was absolutely zealous for the truth. She was a pioneer, but she was, you know what I mean? There were problems. You could tell when you were speaking to her. She definitely had some mental problems. But obviously that she was starting to say things which contradicted or referring to old teachings, the old truth, the old light, those ones, She was doing the old light, the real truth, or whatever, the subsequent, the lies, whatever it is. So when she was doing the old, and then of course what happened was the elders, in their infinite wisdom, said, the only way we can deal with this person who's saying these things is to disfellowship her. And of course, because she was disfellowshipped, it meant that she couldn't go up to the magazine counter and say, can I have 50 Awaken Watchtowers, please, because I've got the world's biggest magazine route, which she did. Apparently she had a massive magazine route, Susan Berryman did. So she started coming along to Rutherglen Kingdom Hall, and she used to, the only person who spoke to her was Jim Wood. So she used to come along chatting to him, and I remember Jim putting her arm around her because she was always crying, she was always tearful, because this organisation that she belonged to for years and years and years now was shunning her. Everybody in her old congregation was shunning her. And bizarrely, I used to see Jim giving her magazines. He still gave her not just one or two, but several Watchtower and Await. I remember him giving them her. And of course, she still unbelievably, even though she was disfellowshipped, even though the congregation, the organisation that she belonged to had disowned her and was shunning her, she still believed it was the truth, and she still went out and did her magazine routes. How utterly sad was that? She still went on the work on her own, still did her magazine routes. Yeah, it's unbelievable, but that's what happened. So anyway, Susan kept on coming to our hall because, it's obviously an extension for the bus ride. And then all of a sudden, she stopped coming. And the next thing is, as what happens. Do you hear about Susan Berryman? No, she's dead. How did she, she's quite a fit woman, she was always out on the work. How did she die? She committed suicide. She committed suicide. How did she do that? And I don't know the exact facts of this, but apparently this is what happened. She lived in a close, apparently, and if you're not from Glasgow, you don't know where a close is. So basically a close is maybe about it's a building which is on like 4 different levels, and the ground floor level has usually got a shop on it, and you go through a door and then you wind up, and on every level of that building there are usually 3 flats. And it usually goes up 4 stories, and loads of people live in Glasgow call closes all tenements, and they live in, you don't have a garden, you have a shared drying yard at the back, and there's just one front door. You go through the front door, you buzz in, and next thing is you walk up to the flat. Apparently what Susan Berryman did is she jumped out of the window of the flat she lived in. So and this is the only story that I know. But needless to say, is she did commit suicide, and partly this was her choice of death. Unfortunately, closes aren't very tall. If she lived in, if she maybe lived in a multi-story, as there were a lot in Glasgow at the time, probably she would have died on impact. Unfortunately, she didn't die on impact, and apparently she died a horrible death, which took, I believe, several days for her to die, because obviously, however she landed, probably if she landed on her feet, all her bones would have shoved up into internal organs. But anyway, you get the drift without going into the specifics of how she died. But she did die. She died, and she died a painful death, a long death. And she died because she had been disfellowshipped and because of the shunning. And I went up to Jim Ward, because this is what I did at those times. I got no problem going up to somebody who I think, this is bothering me, need to speak to about this person. So I went up to Jim Ward, because Jim was the only person I spoke to, and he was presiding over it. And I said to Jim, I says, Susan Berryman's died, and he said to me, yes. And he physically looked upset. And he looked at me and said to me, and this has resonated with me all of my life since then. He said to me, I believe the elders, I think it was Cathcart, so let's call them Cathcart, it might have been Pollock Shield or whatever it is, but I think it's Cathcart. He says, I believe the elders in Cathcart could have shown her more love. In other words, what Jim was saying was, without admitting it, was that the elders' course of action to disfellowship somebody who clearly had mental problems had ultimately caused her to commit suicide and die. If they'd only shown as much love as the elders had in our hall, in the case of Harry Sutherland, she would have carried on what she was doing, would have to wrap her with cotton wool, and do whatever. But they didn't. They didn't show any love, and they do what Jehovah's Witnesses, a lot of Jehovah's like to do. Easy thing, let's just disfellowship them. Because they think that's the loving thing to do. That's the lovely thing to do, disfellowship somebody, and maybe they'll come back, and then the whole thing will be worth it. Well, it wasn't worth it. It didn't work out that way, because of course Susan Berryman committed suicide. She died a painful death because the elders in her congregation disfellowshipped her and didn't show her enough love. Admitted by the presiding overseer, Jim Wood, in Rutherglen congregation, who knew the elders and knew Susan Berryman and knew her circumstances more than I did. I could only know what the basics that he told me, and there was a lot more to the story. So Susan Berryman, probably forgotten in her own hall, apart from ones who are older, nobody even knows who she is. But I thought I'd like to say this on her behalf, because her story needs to be told, because the Susan Berryman story is not typical. I'm sure there are examples all over the world of people who have been shunned by Jehovah's Witnesses and then cannot cope. It doesn't end up being a good thing. It doesn't end up with them eventually, embracing the discipline that you need, and the shunning and the reproof and the disfellowshipping, and then coming along and 6 months later they're back in and, oh, I'm so glad I got this fellowship because it made me a better Christian. I'm sure for everyone there's a better Christian. There's probably maybe another one. It's ended up totally ruining their lives, whereupon their family don't speak to them, their friends have had for 30 or 40 years no longer speak to them, and it ruins their lives. Maybe it doesn't go to the point that they commit suicide, but maybe it affects their life for however long they've got to live. Maybe they're never the same person after that. Maybe their quality of life has completely slipped. Maybe the whole experience has been awful, and they have never been able to cope with going back to the hall and nobody speaking to them, of seeing their own relatives and their own son and their own daughter and their own mother and their own father and their brother and sister not speaking to them, and it's affected them badly. And it's something that I know this for a fact, that when this happens to you, that it affects you all the time, that you still just can't pick up the phone and ring up your mum or your dad or whatever it is, because they won't speak to you unless you're willing to come back to the hall. It's nonsense. But this is how dangerous Jehovah's Witnesses are. This is how awful this organisation is, and this is why, if you're in it, you need to come out of it. Because if you all of a sudden start to say things which are anti-witness, anti-organisational teachings, even if it's something they used to teach you, even if you go, oh, I still do believe in that generation thingy, that sort, and if you go, no, that's what I was taught, that's what I believe, I'm not changing for that point, that you are going to find yourselves disfellowshipped. You're going to find you disfellowshipped just because of that, or just because you want to leave, just because I want to go away quietly. You could find yourself shunned, and your life, your social life and your family life as it stands could be over. And for some people that burden becomes so strong because the truth was everything to them, that unfortunately there are Jehovah's Witnesses who kill themselves. And what a sad story that is, that you end up killing yourselves because these twats don't speak to you anymore, and they were never deserving of your friendship in the first place. Because anybody who does that to anybody else, they're not a friend, and they're not showing love. And the elders never showed love, and of course all the congregation, like sheep, follow the role of the shepherds, and they stop showing love. And the poor woman killed herself. So, a horrible story, a sad story, but it's a true story, and I wanted to bring her back because I think Susan's story should be told, and it should be a warning. It should be a warning for anybody thinking about becoming a Jehovah's Witness, or somebody who wants to leave it. I wish I'd told it earlier, but there you go. Anyway, enjoy the rest of your day. It's a bit of a downer, that story, but hopefully the next one will be a little bit more upbeat. Anyway, bye bye.